I have been looking forward to this one, T.
I haven't. I have not at all. I've been trying to avoid it for a while.
Yeah, I think this is going to be enlightening. I have been wanting to do a budget with you probably since I met you.
And I, like most people, don't like to do budgets.
70% of people don't do a budget. Yeah.
Oh, I feel better now.
Yeah, I think people almost see it as like, it's like an eye roll. It's like, oh, it's so basic. You know, have a goal.
I think it's also daunting. It's just like, oh. And then it's not that, it's a discipline. You got to stick to it once you do it.
Well,
but if you don't have one, you can just do what you want.
Yeah, I think there's something important in that a budget is something that you need to do. You don't just do it once and it's done. It's something that you continuously do. But I actually think it's a good tool for, it's not about cutting back and discipline. It's actually freeing in the sense of your personal finances. The first bit that we're going to do now is brutal. And that's what we're going to do now, is go through the last 3 months of transactions and just look at your real spending habits. Because I have a sneaking feeling, like most people, when you go through 3 months worth of bank statements, that you'll actually find a lot of stuff in there that you didn't really know you were spending as much as you are on. This is something that I do with myself every few months, because the process of budgeting is not like you do it once and then it's done. It's like this constant journey to keep yourself on the straight and narrow. And what I want to do is run through you with yours and develop a budget. But I think that all starts first of all with looking at what you spend, not like what you think you spend, what you actually spend, right? So I asked you to print off 3 months worth of bank statements.
There you go.
I got mine as well here.
Don't expose me too much.
We'll do a little swap. So I think the first thing you need to do is you get 3 months because it gives you a good cross-section of actually what you spend. We can all have a bad month. We can all have, you go on holiday 1 month and you spend more than you should. But I think over 3 months, you get quite a good look at what you're doing. And the process is just to go through it, each item, and mark off, is this essential spending? Is this discretionary spending? Is this something that I didn't think I was spending much on? And just total them all up in category. I mean, let's just have a look at what you've got going on here.
I'm not going to lie, some of these jump out on you. What in the world is Blackpool Pleasure on the 1st of April?
That's a great time. No, that's the Pleasure Beach, mate.
A Pleasure Beach? Tell me more about the Pleasure Beach. Where was my invite?
Theme park.
Oh, a theme park. Okay, yeah. That's definitely what I was thinking.
What's a zip car?
Zip car, for us Londoners, is it's a car you rent when your car's broken.
You've got a car?
Yeah, I know. My car tends to have a lot of issues.
The 3rd of the 1st. No, the 1st of the 3rd to March. Zip car, zip car, zip car, zip car, zip car extended, zip car. That's 9 zip cars in one day.
And a lot of places to be
Where
that
have you
day.
been?
Well, look, they charge you per hour, but
above that is your close brothers. That's the finance for your car, isn't it?
That's my car insurance.
So
yeah.
How many? You've got 2 cars.
I've got my car, and then when it's broken or in the garage or needs repairs,
you valeted your car on the day that you got 9 zip cars. So you drove your car to the valet and then took zip cars round. Is that legit?
Look, I spent too much money on my car. And look,
you spent too much money on other people's cars, mate. Zip car, what is that?
It's like a Boris bike, like those bicycles you line bike. You rent them for like an hour, half an hour, and they charge you per minute on the zip car. It does add up.
Sounds financially sensible, mate.
It does. It's not.
I love the fact that you paid your car finance in the morning, took the car to Westfield Shopping Centre to get it valeted, bought a Boost juice, and then drove home in a zip car.
Look, I don't know. I think that day my car got clamped or something. I don't know. A lot of things happen with my car.
We'll talk about the car and that, but you seem to have a lot of spending on the car at a glance, and cars that aren't even your car.
All right, then. Take it back to you then, Mr. What in the world is manual?
Oh, don't do me like that.
What is a manual?
It's hair loss treatment.
Hair loss treatment? You've got loads of hair. Well, I guess is this a plug for manual?
Manual. Yeah.
Apparently they're
this
doing
isn't
all right.
even sponsored, mate. They do these kits where they send you hair through the
post. Not
hair through the post.
You're getting packs of hair in the mail.
Yeah. It's like creams and gels that you rub on your hair. I went to my barber the other day and he was like, I don't know how to break this to you, but you're going bald quite quickly.
Are you sure this works, or have you just been scammed by like an Instagram advert?
Well, mate,
promoting hair growth.
I'm going to Turkey at some point if this manual doesn't work. I'm going to get the full Turkey kit and a hair transplant and the teeth. So, if that doesn't work, but yeah, that's what manual is. The prodigy repayments.
Student loan, mate. That's my most painful payment ever because it's for my MBA student loan. How much is it?
£821 a month.
That's mainly, no, that's not a month. See, the problem is I ignore them and then they keep messaging me. And then after a while, they're like, look, you're going to default on your whole loan and you're going to owe us 30 grand. So you need to pay. So I'm like, here, have 800 quid. And then I ignore them again for like 6 months until they really get annoyed. Because I'm not trying to pay them like, they want 300 quid a month. I don't have time for that. It's a student loan. I've already got the education. So
you just
they can get it back in their own time when I'm ready.
I hope this isn't a recurring theme of like, I've got the service. Why would I need to pay for it now?
Just kick the can down the road a bit, it's fine.
But you seem to be having a great time in Bali here.
Well, I mean, it was a work trip. It was a work trip, but it was,
This was the day before we filmed the podcast, the first episode. What the hell were you doing in Bali?
Work trip, I told you. Just, let's not talk about where I was in Bali.
Work trip. Christina's spa.
Massages are very cheap in Bali, what can I say?
To Damien Jordan, £20.
There you go. That was in the pub.
You paying me? Oh, that's when you were back from Bali.
Okay,
yeah. Cash at 2 Canal. Yeah, you look like you had a great work trip, mate.
Oh dear. All right, let's have a little look and see what Damien's been up to. Damien, I've noticed a little theme in your payments here. You do a lot of random food. So there's like Subway, Greg's, fish and chips, Greg's, and then like fish loves chips, and then Co-op, and then
the Greg's is just pies.
There's so much Greg's in here.
Yeah, it's just pies.
And what is Formby Models? Are you going for a little modelling career? Is that why you got the hair loss thing?
No.
So you can be a model?
Yeah, Pleasureland and Formby Models. Formby Models, they sell like toy cars. For my son, it's like a car that we drive on the beach together, and he writes it off every single time and I have to take it back and get it fixed.
Well, like actually he physically drives it?
It's like a little remote control car, but it goes like 40 miles an hour. It's like it's over the sand dunes, but he just breaks it. So
you do a lot of kids stuff. You got like Jump Heaven Limited. I assume that's jumping around with your son.
We'll say that. The thing I learned about going through this myself was that I spend so much money on everything. It just goes on my son, essentially. It was actually quite eye-opening just how much I spend. And if I compare that to, say, when I was a child, the activities that I do with him that are probably standard, we have to go out on a Saturday, and that were things that I probably thought were like once every year treats. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The cinema to him's probably boring. And I'm seeing that actually there's probably thousands of pounds a month going out on these activities.
There's more money on your son and, well, which is pretty good, and Greg's than you do on savings. And I know you save a lot of money, but I see £100 to Vanguard and then £1 million to Greg's.
Well,
so how's that work
this
out?
account is my spending account. So we'll get into that in a moment about how I structure my accounts to get around the fact that I will just burn money on experiences and pies if given the chance. So actually, like, you won't see any savings in this because this account is solely for spending. But we'll get into that.
For eating and spending.
Yeah, eating and spending, living, and the rest I waste. So yours tells me that you have a real issue with cars. And you're just, I don't know, like, what's your excuse for not using the tube?
I'm too big for the tube. I
drive in stature or height?
My status.
No.
Yeah, a little bit, but mainly I bang my head on the railing.
You ain't that tall.
I am that tall.
No, you're not.
Just because you're short, don't take it out on me.
No, we need to address this on air. The album art has done me really dirty. Like, they've made it look like I'm shorter than you, and we're the same height.
No, you're definitely not. And it's not just the hair.
You got Cuban heels on, you little high tops. Anyway, look, T, be honest, mate. When was the last time you read a book?
Mate, you know I just had a kid. Don't get me started. I've got no time for that.
Well, I've got what you need. You need to try out this service called Blinkist. What they do basically is they take popular books and then condense them down into 15-minute audio clips that summarize the whole book.
What type of books? I'm a John Grisham man myself.
I have no idea who that is. But anyway, they focus on non-fiction books. They got 5,500 different books. Everything from, like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, personal finance, all the way to like how to parent properly.
Yeah, I need any parenting book possible.
You really need those parenting books. Well, they got 5,500 books on the platform. I can sort you out as well with a discount. So you get 7 days for free when you sign up. And then if you use our code, you get 45% off. All you've got to do is, there's a link in the description as well, by the way. Head to blinkist.com/making money. That's blinkist.com/making money.
I love a deal. I love a discount. I'll check it out and report back to you. Now, back to the show.
I'll let you have that one.
Oh, cheers, man.
So, looking at this, I think for you, there just seems to be a lot of expenditure on what I would call convenience. You clearly take zip cars everywhere, even though you own a car, and that's costing you probably hundreds of pounds a month.
It's quite useful though on a night out. If you want to drink, drive there in a zip car, leave the zip car there, and then you can just find your own way home.
On a night out at 2 p.m.
Okay, so I like to drive everywhere.
So the thing about doing this exercise that I find is, for me especially, is it just reframes what you're actually spending your money on. And I think when people budget, they set a plan, they go, that's fine, and then they don't actually go, well, did I hit that plan? Was it where I need to be? What I've realized, even from doing mine, I would say I'm good with my money. I save a lot more money than I spend, but I just realized just how much I'm spending on activities around my son. And it makes me question, do I need to spend that much, or should I just spend more time with him at home? And also, the pies are clearly a problem with all the Gregs.
There's a lot of Gregs in here.
I just love a road pie, and my missus is vegan, so it's like I'd feel bad eating them in the house, so I just snaffle a hot nice sausage roll in the car.
In the car.
Yeah. She gets in the car, she's like, there's murder in here. She doesn't. She's not that bad. I'm making her sound awful, but it's a guilt thing. Going through the last 3 months, I know you've had to go through this and look at every transaction, because I said to do that before we did it. How did it make you feel?
Slightly depressed. I spend way too much money on things I don't need to spend money on. I mean, because you always think you've got an idea, you've got the apps and it tells you what you're spending money on. So I kind of have an idea for last 2 weeks. But when I did the last 3 months, I was like, probably didn't need to buy that takeaway, didn't need to take all those zip cars, didn't need to generally waste so much money. So when you see a lot of recurring payments, you realize how much you're actually spending. When you pulled up 9 zip car payments in one day, that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, so like one way that I've tried to reframe my spending over time, because I had this constant battle with I shouldn't spend any money, and it's like, no, actually the science shows if you spend money on experiences, they make you happy. And what you can clearly see that from what I do. I spend all my money on experiences with like my son or with my missus and stuff, and those are things that you hold on to long term. You couldn't even remember taking 9 zip cars in one day.
Yeah.
So it's like, has that enriched your life in any way? And the takeaways as well. It's like you buy them out of convenience, but you never remember them, do you? You don't.
And they're getting more and more expensive, and it's just it's not. You might as well just cook. But it's just like you said, convenience. You're working late. Yeah, she's a great cook.
She made that food last night that was amazing, and I remember that longer than I would have if we'd ordered a Chinese.
That's true, but convenience. She's busy. I ordered a lot when she was having the baby, and she wasn't cooking. So every day it was just takeaway.
Yeah, understandable. I think with this exercise, by going through the last 3 months and by being really open and honest about what you're spending and facing it head on, you kind of you hold a mirror up to yourself that you look into, and you see your spending for what it is. And this is something that I have to do. I don't do it every month. I do it once a year, once every 6 months, because as we earn more money, we have this tendency to inflate our lifestyles to fit it. And we lean on convenience, and we can sometimes tell ourselves, well, because I earn more money now, I can afford to take Ubers instead of this. And actually we end up worse off because we're spending so much money on these things.
Zipcar was meant to be the cheaper version of the Uber, but I just take way more.
Well, you took an Uber on the same day as well.
Oh my! What am I like?
It's a brilliant day. It's just this one day, mate. You just rode round all day and cleaned other people's cars while your car was getting cleaned, just with your little boost juice. Okay, so I think once you've done this, once you've gone through all of the transactions and you've highlighted them and you've separated them out into these are essentials, so these are the things that I have to spend to live, your rent or your mortgage and all of that, you can then start to look at what do I actually spend on the things that I lie to myself about, that food. People always say, I spend £300 a month on food. They look at it and it's like, oh my God, I spend 500. Yeah. Travel, nights out and socializing. I just kind of want you to, before you start the budget, to have an idea of where your money's going, because I think then you can face the problem head on.
The only thing I've got covered is holidays. I've got a little holiday savings account, so I just go wild on holidays. But yeah, the rest of it is just kind of chaos.
And I think I want to be able to go wild on holiday.
I always go wild on holiday.
You live for that sometimes, and I think that's like a thing within your life that you should be able to spend a bit of money on. And if you value that, that's
the memories
fine.
And the experience,
As part of this, you kind of got to ask yourself, like, what do I value? Do I value zip cars and takeaways, or do I value big holidays? And a budget really is about sacrifice and deciding what aspects of your life you're going to cut back on so that you can funnel money into the ones that you enjoy. And I think most people think the budget's been restrictive and like constraining your finances. Actually, they set them free in the sense of you go, my priorities are spending time with my son, and my priorities are making memories, So I design a budget that allows for that. But that means I cut back on zip cars and takeaways and boost juice and stuff like that so that I can enable that. In order to do that, you need to face up to what you're actually spending. And then the next step is we need to make a plan on how we hope to spend going forwards. So, T, do you do a budget at the minute?
I do. I do several budgets, but the main way I do it is saving cash that I would have spent otherwise.
How do you do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. This is for my boy.
Oh my
We
God.
put all the coins in there and then like loads of notes in there. That's actually added up quite quickly. And then this is for me. This one's for me. This one's just got
You just got this the wrong way
small
around.
fortune. No. It's a small fortune here, but don't worry about that. This is my retirement fund here. Yeah, this is for the notes, but I accidentally put like a few coins in. But it's mainly for notes. And then this is for everything else.
You legend. So this is almost like envelope stuffing.
Yeah,
so
pretty much. Every week I make sure I put like 50 quid in each.
What I love about this is that like you budget however you want and what works for you. I love a tub like these. Love that. Like I used to.
This is easier because this one I sometimes dip into.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I shouldn't because it's my son's.
It prevents it. And if you have a rule that every time you walk in the house, any cash you got in, you put it in
all
there.
The coins straight in there.
It adds up a lot.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't really call that a budget. It's almost like a
saving
form of
mechanism.
savings.
Yeah.
A budget really is just a tool for telling your money where it's going to go. So there's loads of ways that you can do that, and there's loads of popular types. There's the 50-30-20 rule, which is probably the most widely quoted, but it's slightly controversial because it's hard to stick by now, where 50% of everything that you spend should be going on your needs. So this is your rent, your mortgage, the things that you need to survive. Then 30% goes on your wants. These are things on top of needs, socializing, or let's say you value having a nice phone. I could argue that a £20 phone is a need, but a £90 phone is a want, right? And then 20% into savings is the final piece of that. This is how they say the ideal budget should break down. But we find that with the cost of living crisis, that gets really hard. I mean, how much do you think you spend on rent? Not as a figure, but as a percentage of your income.
More than 50%. Yeah, probably a bit more than 50%.
Yeah.
If you count rent as rent, bills, heating,
that whole
water,
like house
gas,
package.
over 50%.
Yeah. I think the key thing about the 50-30-20 rule is it's thrown in people's faces online. What I would say is it's almost like a target you work to over time. And if you say, I'm hitting these key areas at the moment in terms of these percentages, I'm a bit off here, I can kind of massage it over time. You don't need to get there. Some like straight away. Some people like you, they like having physical cash because, I mean, the data shows that you spend less when you use cash than you do on card. I think it's about 15 to 20%, but I'm just pulling that number.
As you can see from my bank statement, I just tap all day long. So yeah, cash is a lot safer for me. Yeah,
exactly. So there's a method called envelope stuffing, which is where you set a budget and then you get a series of envelopes. And on each envelope, you write what that expenditure is. You might put rent, food, etc. And over the course of the month, as you spend on items, you take money out of the envelope. And then obviously once the money's gone in the envelope, you know you've reached your budget. Okay. And then there's also, you'll hear pay yourself first mentioned a lot. I think this isn't really a budget. This is a method of saving, again, like this, where simply when you get paid, the first thing you do is you save. And so I do this. Like, to me, the best part of earning money is the money I save, not the money I spend. So as soon as the money comes in, I'll transfer money into my savings and stuff. But again, that isn't really a budgeting method. It's a saving method. I think the key thing is what I do. I just list my incomes and I list my outgoings and how I want them to be. So the first thing you need to do is figure out exactly how much you earn. I think in the show notes, we can put a link to my budgeting. It's really crap. It's really simple. It's just an in and out column on an Excel, but I'll let people see it and they can use that if they want. There are more sophisticated ones, like You Need a Budget, which is a paid for service. I find it slightly like, I don't know how I feel about paying for a budget.
I was about to say, I'm not paying for
Sounds like something you would do 6 times in one day. Zip budget. Give me some of that. Yeah. So, for me, just a Google sheet with an incoming and outgoing. And once you've been through all of these transactions over like 3 months, you should have a good idea of what's coming in. And what you want to do is order it in the order of the needs, the wants, and then hopefully the savings. If you can't afford to save at the minute, that's okay. The process is to actually just get control of your finances. You know, a lot of behavioral psychology shows that people avoid budgeting, that feel like they're bad with money because they don't want to face up to it. And that's a crying shame, really, because they're not given the antidote to the problem that they're worried about, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, people don't like bad news, do they?
No.
You always want to, you never want to look badly on yourself. Or,
why don't you budget?
I mean, you know me, I'm quite an optimistic guy. So I don't really I'm very impulsive. So if I see something, I buy it. I don't like to feel constrained, and I feel like a budget kind of limits what you can do. And then again, as an optimistic person, I work heavily in crypto. And I think with my knowledge, I think that my investments in crypto are going to go quite well. Not that I recommend other people to invest in crypto like that, because it's my full-time job. But yeah, I think I'll be all right in the long term. I budget on a whim. I don't really budget, to be honest.
Yeah,
I just put some money in savings now and again, and I buy this and I buy that, and then I'm pretty, you know me, I'm quite a spontaneous guy. So
yeah. So the way I see it is, as a business grows, they need more and more people to run the finances of that business as they get more and more complicated. So as you grow, then you should be managing the finances more and more.
But when I do try to budget, I always get like unforeseen, like unpredictable things happen. Like my car gets clamped, get a flat tire, the engine starts like steaming, and then you go to the car guy and they're like, yeah, it's $2,000 to fix your car. And I'm like, what? I only paid $8,000 for the car. Yeah. So yeah, like things like that just keep happening. And then have a little kid, that messes up all your like
Surprise.
saving.
Where did he come from?
Didn't get any notice. He just popped out. So I think things like that just kind of derail your life. And obviously, as a first time dad, it's like, this whole budgeting for a child is not something I couldn't even like consider thinking about.
Yeah, but the reason that you find that
it's just daunting. It's So
the reason expenses come out of the blue and knock you off track is because you haven't budgeted and you don't have adequate savings behind you in terms of an emergency fund or something like this. It's this point of over time you need to get to a place where the unexpected will happen. Things will shock you. There's always going to be financial shocks. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be flat tires. We need to prepare ourselves through a budget for those. What is it that, anything that can go wrong will go wrong on a long enough timeline. So they're not shocks or surprises. You're just not prepared for them is like one way of saying it.
I'm a very optimistic guy. Yeah. I don't think there will be any shocks ever.
I think maybe I'm pessimistic and that means I prepare. Yeah.
You're like rich dad, poor dad.
Yeah. Not really, but I think
prepared dad and unprepared dad.
I would like to be more optimistic, but my pessimism means that I prepare for the worst, and I think you could do with a little bit of that. If you think that things are always going to get better, but you don't actually make them, they're not going to be as good as they could be.
But I mean, I feel like, I'm still here. My bills are paid. My car works today. So
where could you be?
Where could I be?
Where could you have been right now? If you'd have directed the flows of money and saved more aggressively.
Probably could have bought a house by now and have a G-Wagon, dream car.
Yeah.
But probably spend.
Then you'd just spend all your money on zip cars anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a luxury.
What?
I know, but like, look, say you're living.
Zip cars are luxuries, mate. Like budgeting is not a luxury. Budgeting is a basic.
Say you're living hand to mouth, like bill to bill.
Yeah.
Like.
Then you need a budget.
Then you need a budget. That's what I thought. So that's when I budgeted. But now when I have money, I feel like, well, if a bill comes, I'll pay it. So I don't really need to budget. And so that's kind of how I've gone the other way around. Because when I was broke, I budgeted. And now I have money. I'm like, oh, well, it'll be all right. It'll work out. And then it doesn't. But no, I always feel like it'll work out.
It's hard to argue with your blind optimism.
Dude,
I just sat here you need to budget. Everyone should budget.
I know I need to, but it's it's like this taking the first step. What would you say the first step is to budgeting?
To open a Google Doc.
Because my first thing was save money. Make sure you're saving like 20% a month. Mm-hmm. That's why I try to save like 10 to 20% a month. That was like a step I took. But the rest of the budgeting, not really. Like I'm just like bills come, pay the bills, save some money, keep it going. So like, what would you advise to me?
So. The bills, is it all into one account? Yeah, I think what helped me was I split all my money out into separate channels, and we'll go through that in a second, to manage my lack of control. When everything is just going into one account and all the money's just hitting that one account and everything comes out, it can be very easy to be like, as long as there's enough money in there to cover what's coming out, then it's fine. What I'm interested in, for me, is eliminating unnecessary expenditure in my life that bring absolutely no joy and long-term happiness, that are just a drain.
That's something I do need to do.
So now that I'm self-employed, especially, I know what I have to pull the money out the ground. So I want to know exactly where that's going, and I don't want to just hand it over to people for unnecessary things that don't further my ambitions and my goals in life. So I do the budget. I earn more money now than I ever have, and I budget more now than I ever have because there's more money there, you know. And I know that if I'm sensible with what I have, I can have the life I want, but I can also set myself up so that one day I've got all the options. And I think if you don't control the flow of the money through a budget, you're just going to end up in a position where you're not going to set yourself up right. It's like the most basic of personal finance things. I think most people's issues with personal finance could be sorted out if they just sat down and did a budget.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I'm going to run you through now how I budget, what that looks like, and then how I manage the accounts to make sure that I stick to it. Because people will always say to me, oh, you're so good with money. I am shocking with money. What I'm good at is having a system that prevents me from being shocking. This is why all you see on here, on these statements we've gone through, is me spending, because that's the account that I can do that from. My relationship with my budget has changed over 10 years. I've done the same process. I've got the same budget. I've actually got all of the budgets over that period, one a month. And you can go through it and see my transformation financially from someone who was in loads of debt, who was forced to budget because on the first of every month, all my money was gone. And I was like, how the hell am I going to get through it? To someone now who saves the majority of their income.
So you do a different budget every single month?
At the start of every month. So
you just update the numbers for the coming month?
What I have is a template that I know my incomings, my outgoings. Self-employed is slightly harder because of the way my incomes work. But actually now what I do is I pay myself a salary and a dividend every month that's the same. So there's a predictability to it. But for most people listening, where they just have a relatively stable income that comes in every month, they know when that is. The day before that comes in, I'll sit down, I have my template, which is just the fixed costs. Most people know what their rent or mortgage is going to be and all the other things. And I'll add at that point, like these variable costs, which are the things that you're saying. I know I'm going on holiday, so I know I'm going to need X amount of spending money. I know I'm going to need this. One thing that's non-negotiable that I see as a fixed cost is paying down debt or saving, whichever point you are at in your life. So I just put those transactions on, and then I kind of say, this is how much I would like to spend. And then I always add a little bit more if I can, because you always tend to underestimate what you're going to spend. And if you can, have like a little contingency. The priorities, they're hard to say because they're personal, but obviously if you're in lots of debt, you should be focusing on clearing the debt before you're saving. Once you've cleared your debt, you want to focus on building an emergency fund so that you don't end up back in debt because your car breaks down or whatever. And then thirdly, it would be investing for the long run. These are all priorities, but in that order, I would say, but that depends on where you're at. The way that I make sure that I stick to it is I have loads of different accounts.
How many? Roughly?
6.
Bloody hell.
No, 7.
Bank accounts?
7 bank accounts. 7 current accounts.
Current accounts, yeah, not counting savings.
This is going to be ridiculous, and I don't think that people should run it.
Do you
like
have 7
this.
bank cards?
No, I have one. That's part of the hustle. I have one bank account, because if I have access to all the others, I'll spend money on them.
Yeah.
So this exercise of going through my bank statements is not something I do all the time. I just think this is, if I'm saying to someone, do a budget, and they're like, no, I'm like, right, let's go through 3 months worth of bank statements and scare the crap out of you. And then we can talk about doing a budget. That looking backwards is not something I do all of the time. What I then do is I have an in column, which is my incomes, and I have an out column, which is a list of all of the expenses that I expect to have. Most of those are fixed. So once you've done it once, it stays the same. And then I have a few categories for variable costs as they come up. These can be things like, you're going on holiday and you need a bit of extra money, something comes up, or even just a contingency fund for unexpected events. As what I then do when I get paid into my main account is I fire off as much of the money as possible on the fixed costs just to get them off my plate. Like you said, once the bills are paid, they're paid. Yeah. So all of that happens on, say, the first of the month. I actually then go through the budget, and next to it, I just put a green tick. So I know at that point that item has been paid for. The issue that I don't have issues managing the fixed costs that I can know are going to be the same every month, because you just pay them, they're gone. The real issue is managing the variable costs, like your socializing, like your the activities that you do, zip cars, all of that stuff. It's managing that I find that I need to have a structure in place to stop me from being reckless. So I have my main current account that my money comes into, and then the first thing that happens is I fire money into my lifetime ISA, my stocks and shares ISA, the junior ISA for my son, and then I send money to a savings account for like my emergency funds and my tax, because self-employed tax. I then pay out as much as I can. I do it all manually. Most people set things up by direct debit. I just find I'm really more connected to my finances if I'm making those transaction purchases myself. You know, if I'm sending the money to X bill or whatever. And I enjoy the process now. I love it. Like, I know it sounds really weird, but the best part of my month is kind of sitting down and firing that money about. I then move on to my other account, my spending money. If I budget, you know, X amount of money on a monthly basis to spend, I then send that over to that account, and there's 3 accounts there. What I effectively do is each week I send myself a portion of that money onto my card account. So if let's just pull figures out the air. Let's say there's £800 a month that I can spend on myself. I move that over to that account, and then each week it'll send me 200 on a Monday. And once that's gone, it's gone. And sometimes I have to go over, sometimes I dip in and I don't. But I find that process keeps me grounded in terms of my spending. And like, I can look at that really quickly at a glance and go, oh God, I've actually spent a lot this week. Whereas if it's all in one pot, I have no idea.
That's really good advice.
The one card means that that's the only card I can spend on. And it just limits my ability to run through it all. And then the third account in that system, I will take chunks of money and send it over to the third one, which is kind of like a mini savings account for when people, you know, my mates are like, oh, do you want to go here? And I'm like, yeah, I use that money in there. So from that BS budget, I build up a little savings pot to like go on holidays and things like that. Like, I have all these silly rules that people don't need to apply to their life. But Jay-Z said, if you can't afford to buy it twice, you can't afford it. Yeah. If I have a big night out and I spend like £100, the first thing I do in the morning when I'm feeling rough is I send another £100 to that little mini savings. So that it's like, it's almost like a punishment, but it also means over time I build up another side pot of cash that when my mates go, do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? I can say yes without it completely derailing me. But the main point is, I don't think you need this complicated structure. You just need an ability to, I almost pay myself weekly my money that I can spend.
For me, I have like a mess around budget. I'm like, okay, it's in my bank, and then I send some.
How do you ensure?
But once I finish that, I don't have any more to send myself. I don't look, boys. You pay yourself every week.
It's nice knowing that
I've got to survive the whole month, and then it's like, crap, my bank's empty now. I need to go into my savings and get some money out. Whereas you're like, okay, on Monday I'm gonna send myself another 200 quid.
It's really nice knowing that I'm always 7 days away from getting paid.
Exactly. You know, so I might adopt that. That's quite cool.
And then what happens is, I'll be like, Thursday I've spent all the money, and I'll be like, well, I'll just go a few days without actually really buying anything. Yeah. And I mean, you know,
have a quiet weekend.
Yeah, and it frames. I just think you see the expenditure much more. Like, it's like the cash stuffing thing where people have it in their hand. Like you with this, it's like physical. Yeah. It almost creates that kind of structure. And for me, I know lots of people are different, but for me, I am rubbish at having a big chunk of money in my bank. I will just get liberal with it. Yeah, I do that all the time. Like, that's why
when I get to a certain amount of this, I'm gonna go boom into the ISA, start again, and then when I get to that certain amount, it's £1,000. I came straight into the ISA, exactly. Start again. But I know if I've got £1,000 in my bank, I'm running through it by the end of the week.
We came to yours last night, and I wanted to watch the City game, and you've got Sky, and you were like, "Oh, BT, it's 23 quid," and I was like, "Buy it."
Yeah, 28 quid. He was going to buy just to watch Man City.
I wanted to watch the game,
game.
But that's what I'm like, and I'll be impulsive. But then I can look at it and go, "Oh, well, now I've actually only got 100 quid left for the week," which is plenty, you know. But I am very impulsive like that, and it's about managing those traits. And you're a sucker for convenience. Oh, yeah. But then if you frame it from a perspective of, if I get 7 zip cars today, I've just eaten away all my ability to have a drink and go out with my son or take him on an activity. I honestly think with you, as well as your son gets older, you will get less and less.
Yeah, because now he doesn't need anything. He's eating for free.
You don't see the cost.
Except for the nappies.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Maybe I'll get a bit more frugal as I get older, or just wilder. We'll see.
I just want you to do a budget where you say, I earn this amount of money and this is how much I would like to spend. And then to set up a system that just made you actually do that for a month and just see how much money you've got left. I reckon you just have grands extra that you were like, oh my God, where is all this
wasting money
come from?
on unnecessary things.
Yeah. The thing about this as well is that it's bespoke to everyone, and my system is my own, and it's simple in places, and then it's really complicated with all these 6 accounts. And I think most people just need to sit down and think, what's going to work for me? Self-employed people are obviously in a very different situation. I've had to get to a point over time where I've made it so I'm almost being like full-time paid, so that I could continue to manage my finances, because when I was just taking all the money and it was all over the place. Some people I know, our producer is more comfortable doing a yearly budget. I would lose my head doing that. That wouldn't work for me personally. You might want to do it quarterly. I know people that do it weekly, whatever. It's about designing it that works for you. And hopefully today it's me just showing what I do. It doesn't mean that that's how people should do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's each to their own. I mean, for me, what I've learned, what I'll take from this is, first of all, it's very traumatic to look at your last 3 months of expenditures if you're like me and you spend way too much money on unnecessary things. So I guess the first step for me is kind of look at what I'm spending to start my budget, look at what I'm spending that I don't need to spend so much of, create a budget, and most importantly, split my money into more than one account, because I think that's actually been because I don't have an overdraft. I refuse to have a credit card or an overdraft. I used to have a credit card. I got rid of it. So I like you. I don't
manage that habit.
I don't like debt. I got rid of once I paid off my credit card. I'm like, never again. Even though it's good for your credit file, I'm just not responsible enough. I'll spend it all on one holiday in like 2 days and then be like, crap, and then pay it off for 6 months. So no overdraft, but I think having another bank account or
I think just the simple act of you going, I'm going to spend £700 this month on stuff, putting it in a bank, and then seeing how quickly you run through that would address a lot of your issues, and you'd be like, oh, well, I need to get that under control.
And I like the idea of being paid more than once a month.
Yeah,
I want to be paid every week like Damo.
Yeah, it's a great feeling.
Sounds pretty good. Yeah.
I love a Monday.
Yeah. That's a good spin for Mondays. Yeah, get paid every Monday. I like that, because putting money in this is actually very satisfying. Like every time I put money in one of these pots, I feel like, yes, I've just saved some money which I would have spent on a takeaway. So yeah, getting paid every week, spreading your money across different bank accounts, I think it'd be good.
Yeah, because as people as well, we get money, we spend it all, and then we live in famine. Like 50% of people are paycheck to paycheck, even people that earn $100,000 a year in an American study, because we just kind of get our money, go rah, and launch it all and go out and spend loads. And then by the end of the month, we're absolutely clucking for payday. And then when payday comes around, it's like, oh, I've just had 2 weeks of
no money. Let me
so
go.
I'm going to throw all my money again.
Have a nice steak dinner and get an Uber then and Uber back. And let's get the champagne out tonight. I just got paid.
Get a zip card to the Uber. and whereas if you pay yourself regularly, you kind of remove that. Let's
living for payday.
And I think that's really freeing. And I think I used to hate that cycle that I would get into.
Yeah, it's
and now I've removed
looking
that
for
by
payday.
Yeah. Only time will tell if T actually does a budget, but on the basis he got a zip car home after we finished recording that episode, I don't have high hopes. We put a link to my basic budget in the newsletter, along with a bullet point summary of this episode, which you can subscribe to in the description. And next week, we're having the Bank of England over for tea. True story, pretty wild that. We're going to learn how economics really affects us all. But if you're new to the channel, then you need to watch this episode first, which is all about your relationship with money. And that's exactly where you should start.